The winds are blowing here in SoCal, which means I'm very congested, but that also means when the winds blow, it's the winds of change. And this time, it's the brand new NZXT H1. Don't be fooled, this is actually quite a bit different than the first one. We're gonna take a look today what's different, what's updated, what's changed, and whether or not they listened to the gripes. Bring your setup to the next level with CableMod's all-new custom coiled keyboard cables. Available in a variety of colors and connector types utilizing best-in-class connectors, the keyboard cables give your setup a look and feel it deserves. To see the complete lineup of custom keyboard cables available from CableMod, click the link in the description below. So I've got the Star Wars build on the table because a lot of people have been asking me like, Jay, what's the deal with the Star Wars build? Well, I actually paused working on this because I knew this was coming. They had reached out to us a while back to explain to us that this was coming, but I didn't have any details on it yet. I didn't know, I mean, the pictures I had of it on the outside looked the same. So I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to just maybe swap these panels over to the new H1. And when I say the new H1, the naming is one of those things where it's kind of like Apple and the iPhone. Remember there was an iPad and then the new iPad and then just the iPad? They're both called H1, only this one's called H1 2020 and this one's H1 2022, which I wish they had just called it H2, if you want to know the truth. But anyway, I'm gonna slide this away because that's why this build was on hold. I want you guys to understand. These panels are not compatible because that is a 13-liter enclosure. This is a 15-liter enclosure, so they've already made it bigger.
They put a whole soda bottle in there?
An entire, well, it's Mountain Dew. Let's say Mountain Dew in there. I don't drink Mountain Dew, I don't drink soda, but whatever, I digress. It is a bigger chassis. Now, one of the things you might remember from my Star Wars build, and this is the only H1 I had to compare it to because of the fact that, well, I gave away the other one, and then this has all the panels on. But I might as well take the panels off now because I need to compare it, the internals. It's the internals that we care about most because we want to show you where the differences are and how they incorporated all of that. And the way the disassembly and stuff works on the H1 2022 edition is the same as what you just saw. Side panels pop off, although one side panel there's glass, I replaced it with this, with another OEM panel, so I had these solid panels to work with. But now, hey, that's where the 3080 Ti went.
Honestly, I was thinking the same thing.
In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and take this out because one of the things that we'll be checking is GPU fitment. Fitting larger GPUs in an H1 has always been tough. But that's one of the reasons why they've expanded the internal volume from 13 liters to 15 liters. And that's specifically to fit bigger GPUs in there. Now, if you recall, geez, there's so much static. Look at the hair in my arms.
Whoa. Ah!
But something else they've also done, if you look at the side panels, is they have significantly enlarged the perforation in the grill. This is also to allow for better airflow. And I'll have to compare this with the piece I put back on the wall behind me to actually show you the difference. Because small openings, I should say, perforations and such, they look nice, but they obviously really hinder airflow. So if we put this side by side, you can already see it's taller and it's wider. Yeah, 3.2 millimeters. On the original, 4.7. So it's about 30%. You know, it's funny, actually, just did that math right now. I do recall seeing the reviewer's guide, they said 30% more airflow. So I guess that's where they're getting the airflow number is by the opening of the perforation in the side panel. So yeah, it's about 30% more, which is pretty significant. It might not seem like it, but one other thing that's also different, do you remember how I cut this hole in the top here so that my top fan could help with exhausting stuff? They didn't do that, which I really wish they would have, but what they did instead is they added a little exhaust fan. So it might not seem like much, and it's only like a 92 millimeter, or actually 80 millimeter fan. Any sort of assisted exhaust of hot air that's gathering at the top of this chassis is going to be better than nothing. So because they made it taller, you can see the layout is roughly the same on where things sort of land, but you can see they were able to put it right here. So they notched this piece back, and then because it's a little deeper, they were able to push the GPU back some, and now you have this exhaust fan up here. So now that we have some sort of assisted exhaust, you can see where their claims regarding better airflow come from. And blowing through this, like just with a slight amount of breath, I guess, without pushing too hard, I can tell that the airflow is there. So let's take a look at the inside. I'm curious as to if it's got the same 140 millimeter cooler. Yes, it does. So it comes with the same pre-installed 140 millimeter AIO. So this is a fold down doohickey. And these are captive screws, so you don't lose them like I did. See, that folds down like that. Gives you access to your CPU cooler, which the pump is located in the radiator, by the way. It's right here. So that's gonna be better than having it, say, sitting on top of the CPU. And the reason for that is depth. Because if you added the height that you would typically find of an Asetek cooler, this wouldn't close. So we found that out ourselves, that you cannot go any taller than like what this is right here. So you can see just how low profile this block is. And this is just the block at this point. It doesn't, because it's not an Asetek design. The pump is in the rad. So there's that right there. In terms of the layout, everything is the same except for the compartment right here for the graphics card. But before we do that, let's remove this riser cable, because I know that that is the first thing everyone is gonna wanna know because of the history with the H1 and the first edition riser cables and the fact that they were, well, catching fire due to a grounding problem. Everyone's gonna wanna know what is installed in this guy. If you take a look at this guy, you can see it is fully shielded and grounded. You can see that the ground goes all the way through, both sides. If you take a look inside the hole, you can see that that ground continues through. So it is completely isolated from any other circuits inside this riser. Gen 4 16X says it right on the PCB. So there's that. So obviously they have listened to their own history. It's pretty obvious they do not want a repeat of what happened back in 2020. And thank God for that, because we've talked about this in the past. Anything that can cause a fire is absolutely unacceptable. So let me reinstall this, and then we'll take a look at the size of the GPU compartment, because that's the other major advertising / selling point of the larger H1 is the fact that you can now fit larger aftermarket cards. See, the reason why you saw the 3080 Ti in my Star Wars build was because that's what I decided to put in there after I realized no matter how much finagling I did, I was not gonna be able to fit any sort of a large cooler aftermarket card. And with the increased airflow, the exhaust fan at the top, you're gonna wanna fit as big a card in here as you can. I mean, of course, anyone's gonna wanna fit the biggest card that they can. Whether or not you can buy the card is another story. But if you can, then obviously you're gonna wanna do that. So what we're gonna try and fit in here today, just out of curiosity, and I don't know if it's gonna fit, is a big old Strix card. I feel like if we can fit a Strix, we can fit anything. What? Dude, that kind of went in there without any like effort. Hold up. No. There it is.
Holy crap.
And there's room for the plug still on this side, look. See? Wow. And then if you wanted to have even extra airflow and you don't care about the dust, take the dust filter out, and then, as you can see, you get nice perforation there. Let me make sure these power plugs do in fact plug. And yeah, it's all like a loose tooth right now because I don't have it screwed down. This is why building in cases is important, because things might look on the surface like, oh yeah, that's well thought out and that works really well. But then you go to build and you're like, oh, there's no room for the plugs. You know, that sort of thing does indeed happen. Ooh, that is a tight fit though, I tell you. Bam. So you can't really see it there because it's white. Yeah, so you get to see your graphics card lighting right there. And then this goes back on this side. Dude, it's already such a chungus. That's a lot of GPU though for this case to cool. Fortunately, you know, this is all intake. This is enough room for, you know, if it starts to get hot, convection will help at least push the heat out. But having that one fan up top, that's really gonna help. Just any sort of assisted, you know, flow of air. And the fact that it's at the very top is gonna help, because that's where all the heat in this case is gonna go. It's gonna go to the top. And then just having that help is gonna be awesome. But you know what's funny? Not much else with this has changed. It's a little wider, it's a little taller. And what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna try and put that Strix in the original H1 so you can kind of see how just such a little change Just, you know, we've done this in the past before. We work in a case and we're like, why didn't they make it just a little taller or just a little wider? Because then you could fit so much more. You can see here this notch right there makes it so much easier to get the card in and out. So that allows this part right here to just slide in, just like that. And then when you take it out, it's a lot easier. If you look at the original H1, it's solid right there. So that makes it a little bit harder to try and get it in. Now, if you look at these two side by side, you can clearly tell this one's bigger. But if I took this off the table, it doesn't suddenly feel any bigger, honestly. The footprint of it's nearly identical. It's a little taller, a little wider in all dimensions. It's like they controlled T on the corner and then just like 5%, if that. But look at the difference that makes on what you can fit in there. That doesn't even fit like width-wise. Look at that, I can't even. So yeah, now I'm not, and this isn't some infomercial where it's like, this is real, like that, it doesn't. Okay, now you see how I'm literally just like, oh, come on. Oh, there we go, I got it to fit that way. I mean, the height, the Z-axis, we can't do anything about that, can we? But the new one, again, not being that much bigger. Right, I mean, it's like just enough, which is perfect. All right, power supply. I'm curious because this guy, it's so little. 30 series and like high-end 6000 series of AMD are power-hungry GPUs. 650 won't cut it, which is why they stepped this up to a 750. So little changes that made a big impact on one of the smallest cases that you can buy. It's pretty close to a bare bones. I mean, it's got a cooler, it's got a power supply, it's pre-wired. You just throw in your motherboard, your memory, your storage, and your graphics card, and you're up and running. You know, it's funny, I'm building this big system for myself, but the more these cool small form factor cases come out, the more, like the Corsair One, that's still my favorite all-in-one PC you can get, period. One all-in-one. I absolutely love the aesthetics of that. But you can't buy that as just a bare bones and put your own stuff in it. So this is the closest that you can get to that, although that one's much more rounded, this is much more square. The fact that you could fit a 12900K or a 5950X and a 3090 and then potentially a 3090 Ti whenever it comes out in there as well. I guess what we're gonna have to do next at some point, maybe this week, is do a build in here and just let the test run and see what the thermals really end up being. I wish I had a standard H1 still, not my modified one, so I could have them literally identical builds side by side to compare the differences to, because they're claiming quite a few C in terms of temperature drop, and that's attributed to the 30% larger holes and the exhaust fan at the top and the slightly larger internal volume. The larger the internal volume, the cooler cases end up being. That's why cases are usually big enclosures. That way you have a big cubic inch or centimeter of volume to exchange that air. It doesn't heat up as fast. Thermal capacity is higher with a higher volume of air. All right, guys, there you go. H1 updated. I'm glad to see the riser cable is probably not going to be a problem this time around. Something so cheap and so small ending up being a problem, you know, for a brand that I feel like, you know, tried to do something really great with the first H1. And this goes back to what I said in my video a few videos ago about brands that you can still trust. It's how they react to and remedy and move forward from issues that determine whether or not you can trust them, rather than whether or not they've ever had an issue. Because every brand's had a problem. Even your favorite brand, even the brand that you're the biggest fanboy of out there that could do no wrong, I guarantee you has done wrong. You're just blind to it. And so I'm glad to see that they've made changes to this. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Maybe I feel the name, it's a little confusing, only because now when time goes on and people start selling these, you're gonna have the same name product of one that is vastly different from the other. I feel like they should have called it an H2. Phil thinks they should have called it an H1 Plus. Regardless, I think they should have changed the name and not been H1 2022. There you go, guys. Sound off what you think down below. Are you willing to take a shot on this case? It's not cheap because of the AIO and because of the power supply. I mean, these were like $300 when they first came out, the first edition H1s, and this one's not gonna be any cheaper. But again, you're getting more than just a case for it. So I'm curious as to whether or not you're willing to take a chance on it given these changes that they've made, or is it still kind of like, I don't really trust them at the moment. Sound off down below, guys. Thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you in the next one.